course. The next thesis is going to be presented by Mrinal Venkata Krishnan, a postgraduate student from the University of Melbourne in Australia. The title of the thesis is Re-invigorating the Riverine Realm, Integrating Urban Design for Water Quality, Resilience and Cultural Preservation in the Yarra River in Melbourne, Australia, guided by Professor David May under the theme of urban landscape. Mrinal, I would hand over you to share. Start sharing. Thank you.
Can you, I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Mrinal, and my Master of Urban Design thesis topic is Re-invigorating the Riverine Realm, Integrating Urban Design for Water Quality, Resilience and Cultural Preservation in the Yarra River, situated in Melbourne, Australia. The thesis studio was water, and it was submitted to the University of Melbourne. Now, the three main questions that came to my mind in the initial stages were, how and when did water evolve in Melbourne? What is the timeline of events that took place during the evolution? What are the problems encountered and how were they resolved? Upon my research, I understood that Melbourne is one of the 5 cities with pure form of water stored in the protected catchments. As we can see in the map of Greater Melbourne region, there are many reservoirs and catchments, but there are 5 prominent catchments situated in the outskirts area with no public engagement allowed. However, the rivers that emerge from these catchments undergo various engagements and problems. Now, these problems include urbanization, population growth, stormwater runoff, climate change, public engagement, and agriculture. I chose Upper Yarra catchment for my study, as the Yarra River flows from this catchment at the northeast top of the all the way down to the southwestern bottom of the region to the Port Phillip Bay. Now, the main aim of this thesis was to provide a comprehensive and forward-thinking approach to the revitalization of the Yarra River. Through sustainable urban design solutions, I endeavored to improve water quality, address climate change impacts, and create economic opportunities with the ultimate goal of preserving and regenerating the vital natural resource for the benefit of the environment and communities that depend on it. I worked out the Yarra framework. The river consists of the 3 main parts. The Upper Yarra, which is of high cultural significance, so I named it the Heritage. The Middle Yarra, which flows through the suburban areas where most of the rivers congregate, and so I named it the Flows. And finally, the inner city region, which terminates at the Port Phillip Bay, and so I named it the Bay. Now, one would think that the quality of the Yarra River would be the worst in the Bay due to the public engagement. However, upon research, I understood that the water quality actually deteriorates in the flows. Therefore, I decided to explore the flows. I examined various reasons responsible for the bad water quality in the rivers, in the flows, and mapped them out. Firstly, many poor quality smaller rivers and creeks congregate at the flows with various sediments. Secondly, there are potential bushfire and flood prone areas. And lastly, there are 21 stakeholders responsible for the management of the Yarra River in the flows. Finally, we can also see that there are various sewage treatment plants, litter hotspots, existing pollution, and a polystyrene hotspot, which is responsible for the bad water quality. To conclude my research findings, we can say that there are a few positive qualities as well as negative. The positive qualities include the network of wetlands, protected parklands, the heritage values, the vast open spaces, and water-watch sites. The negative qualities include the flood-prone zones, the bushfire zones, the stormwater runoff, the increasing litter and waste, the sediment flows, and flows from the treatment plants. The next stage in my thesis was to set out specific objectives that I wanted to achieve. Identify factors for improvement, evaluate climate resilient urban design strategies, examine the green-blue infrastructure's effectiveness in water quality and ecology, propose sustainable sediment and waste management solutions, preserve the cultural heritage, assess the significance of recreational spaces for revitalization, and investigate economic opportunities from urban design for the local growth. To achieve these objectives, I chose a focus zone in the flows. Now, this focus zone is located at the end of the flows and to the beginning of the inner city region. Now, this focus zone included an existing polystyrene hotspot, an existing cultural and heritage center, a river node of the Yarra River and Merry Creek, a few of the recreational spaces, wetlands, a native nursery, and the golf course. The proposed functions included the polystyrene recycling hub, which is below here, sediment park to recycle the sediments and sediment for public, enhancing existing waste recycling hub and recreational spaces, sediment and waste recycling pavilions for economic opportunities, wetland parks and creek lookouts for community engagement, and the use of native plants for riparian buffers, terraces, and climate resilience. I wanted to create synergies in the flows, the materials, and create strong linkages across the entire focus region. Now, the design concept evolved from the existing river outline and the ovals on the site. Now, these ovals are the cricket ovals and the golf courses. Then I started tracing the river to form the elevated cycle path and the pedestrian path, which is on the ground. Finally, I added functions, which is similar to the geometry of the existing ovals. When it comes to the sediment management and the waste management, the sediment management is taken care by dredging the excessive sediment and then recycling it into sediment blocks. Now that's the sediment blocks would be used for the river embankments as well as for the sediment park where there would be sediment pavilions and for native plantation. The waste management would be taken care by the recycling parks for the polystyrene as well as the waste, where polystyrene is recycled into ecological towers. There is waste management. The waste is recycled, including polystyrene insulation for rainwater harvesting. Then there's recycled waste art pavilions for the workshops and markets. Also use of the waste recycled for the elevated bike path. The polystyrene recyclement can also be used for street furniture and the pavilions. This is the main master plan where we can see the elevated bike path as well as the existing ovals. The other ovals are the proposed functions. It starts off with the wetland park, the amphitheater zone, the recreation zone, waste management zone, the sediment zone, and the climate resilience zone. Each zone has a role to play. The amphitheater zone focuses on the climate resilience, community engagement, and heritage preservation. It includes amphitheater for flood mitigation, the waste and polystyrene pavilions for stormwater management. The recreation zone improves the existing skate park and the recreational spaces. It provides creek lookouts for community engagement, and it also addresses rainwater harvesting with flood control for an extra layer of the riparian buffers. The waste management zone upgraded the recycling hubs and added recycling art and waste pavilions. The sediment management zone dealt with the excessive sediment, creating the recycling hubs and workshops. It provides an opportunity open to the public, educating them while also creating more economic opportunities. The climate resilience zone incorporated the biofilter strips for floods and recycled polystyrene pavilions for, again, rainwater harvesting. It also used the sediments for native plantation, in turn using these for the riparian buffers. My thesis achieved significant results by targeting these main zones within the Yarra River Precinct, and these contributions actively contribute to the sustainable urban design and river revitalization with positive ecological, social, and economic impacts. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrinal, for your presentation. I would like to call our panelist and to quickly say a few words on her work. Clara, would you like to go first?
Yes. I'm very happy to go first. We're in the same time zone. So first of all, thank you for your presentation. That was, a beautifully well documented research on the Yarra River, and understanding how relevant this river is for the city. That said, I think everything you described up to the urban design strategies is spot on. I think it's really well documented and it's looking really in a great direction. I think once you get into that part of the presentation, things start to kind of seem a little bit more confusing to me, at least, just because I guess that's something that I've seen constantly in other presentations as well. The representation narrows the problem, like it's good up to a certain point, and then when you're dealing with a specific site, there's more information, you know, that we all want to know. Like, how does this look like? In this forum, everyone wants to see how does the Yarra River even look like in the first place, you know? And I think the use of all the informations and platforms we have, we should use them. We shouldn't be afraid of, you know, mixing and matching representation. I think there's no problem in, you know, putting a small video or put a good image, a photograph that you have taken on site to really show and portray what the circumstance of that river is in the specific area that you're talking about on top of it. It's not just a random place of the river. So in that sense, I would highly recommend, once you've chosen this area of the flows that you've named it, which suburb is this? Like, I was looking in the map trying to find where exactly
It's near
this is
Abbotsford.
sitting. It's in the Abbotsford area. Yeah, I could see the highway going, but because I know that area so well, like, and I think that's a little bit of it gives a little bit of trouble to assess something like this when you don't have that full story. That's the first thing. It's a very, you know, prominent area, very kind of easy to access area in the inner suburbs of Melbourne. So that makes a whole lot of difference than thinking this is just, you know, somewhere afar or in the very center of the city for that, in that sense. I think when your presentation moves towards the solutions, I have more doubts, because I feel you found this idea of recycling, which I think is a great starting point, but you kind of use that as a one solution fits all. Like, if I recycle plastic, you know, I'm done. This is it. Like, everything about this project would have to be about recycling plastic, you know, and there's a major piece of infrastructure that you're proposing, which is an elevated bike path, which kind of gives this kind of contrast to this whole narrative of recycling and just being more mindful on resources. You know, it's two kind of opposing forces, I feel, in your project, like in the last part. And then when we see, you know, your strategies going into each of those focus zones, you can tell that there is, you know, a very build up solution to the problem. Like, everything gets solved with big pieces of infrastructure, rather if that is, you know, the bike path or these trees or all this kind of infrastructure that could be anywhere else in the world. And I feel there is a little bit of a lack of connection between your really deep research and then the solutions that seem to be a little bit more generic and less specific to the place. And again, representation, even though it's a, you know, beautifully looking diagram, it's still missing some of the relevant things to assess an intervention of this sort, just because we're missing some information because of the representation. So yeah, that's about it for me. I think overall it's a really good thesis, but I think in the last part could have a little bit of a change in representation, and with that, you know, your project would have been informed of different things that could potentially make more sense to that specific area. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Uchenji, if you'd like to say some words for her.
I'm Ronald.
Hi.
Yeah, clear work, and as I said, not said, again, a very vast, very big topic, you know. I don't know, it's a daring to take such a topic and try to finish it. But well done. I mean, a lot of research must have gone in the first part.
Yeah.
Which shows up pretty well, but maybe in a bigger drawings, more time and all that will show up. But I see distinct, you know, in the 15 drawings, 1 to 7 is one story, 8 to 10 is another story, or rather not a different story, but another story. And 11 to 15 is another stage, and they kind of look, in terms of their merit and the kind of comments you will attract from us will be very different, So what has happened is basically the scale jump and the detail shown, okay? And while between the first two is acceptable, and very difficult to read also, and with your explanation, it helped. But when it comes to the big jump after 10 sheet, the last 5 sheets, I think Clara was talking about it, but it is a little disturbing for a topic like this, which is very broad-based, and jumping into almost detailed design, it is nothing is left. You put dimensions, it can be built. And so that's kind of disturbing. I mean, you write that they are kind of solutions, but they should be the solution should be schematic or rather conceptual. I mean, let somebody decide whether it should be elevated or on the ground or the mix of both. The geometry you may write that you will prefer by design that it should be kind of a winding kind of a thing, a riverine kind of a look of the conceptual, but you need not trace the path exactly. And so anyway, that disturbed me a little bit. Those drawings, 5 drawings, it's so strong and so much of conviction, that architectural conviction on a very urban kind of a project. So other than that, if it was architecture, maybe I would, take it. Maybe it is architecture, but then I would take one of those ellipses or circles or all those forms and go a detailed design, showing architecture in it. So it kind of sat in between.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
unfortunately it was the given from our university that we were required to pick a site and then evolve
you
it
should
into a
pick
very
up, yeah.
specific thing.
But you must remember that you should pick up the underlying principles of any design so that somebody
Yes.
else can follow those principles. You design the principles, not the design.
Yeah.
I mean, sounds crazy, but that's it, I mean, this is an urban project, whether
Yes.
whether the architect does it or whoever does it. So you
Yes.
you design the concepts only, and give it to the architect. All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gary, would you like to say a few words on her work?
Some of the things that I noted down was already addressed by my colleagues here. Again, my biggest issue was the jump of the scale, because suddenly from a whole river it went to a site, and it would have been fine if you had a few slides in between showing what the transition is, why exactly you chose this one particular site, and how it responds to the bigger story that you're trying to tell. Again, it's been addressed by Ujenji. Another thing was about, anyway, you designed the site now, so let's get into landscape architecture. So you're talking about the amphitheater, you're talking about the climate resilience, or you're talking about showcasing waste, circularity of waste. So I feel like it's a bit too isolated in a way, because if you're trying to portray a principle in a design, I would suggest you stick to one in a way. If you're trying to talk about sustainability in the amphitheater, just stick to that for the whole master plan. You can work with the other elements in your other project, because it's a master plan project. It's a larger scale of interventions, right? It's not just one project. But then again, like you had this the climate resilience zone where you had reed beds along the rivers, if I'm not wrong. Is that
Sorry?
enough? You had planting along the
Yeah.
river, right? The question is that technically enough for filtering water, or phytoremediation is a term that we use, the kind of vegetation that you use? What is the technical things that you need to look into while you're designing a practical element like this? Again, the cycle route, it reminded quickly of this project by Lola, the Dutch company. I had a friend who worked on that project, and she was showing me this nice pedestrian walkway through the forests of China. But then this is a completely separate context. You're not in a forest. You really want people to be on ground within this scale of things that's happening around them, not really bike over it. You want them to bike through it, right? It's not a protected wetland. You are basically proposing a new project. So again, the specifics of these details can be taken up later. But then as an urban designer, what you can do, or what we usually do, is set up a list of guidelines. That's the deliverable as a professional that you make. You deliver a set of guidelines that says this is the character, or these are the set of ideas or principles that should denote your detailed design. And then the rest is up to whoever is taking it up later on. Maybe it's you again, maybe it's a different company who's going to be a subcontractor for your bigger vision to be implemented. So again, it's just a specific detail. Otherwise, I think the process is clear, except for the scale jump. I would just look into it once again. But then the graphic and the style, it's very very nice, very well presented. And yeah, let's see how you work on this and the future projects that you work on. Things to look at, big picture thinking, and the process is very clear. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.